Today I'm going to talk about how we actually go about getting a custom printer profile made. It's a fairly straightforward procedure, but there are a number of settings that have to be done. If you don't have the right settings, then the profile won't work. So we're just going to walk you through the process today. We're also going to point you in the direction of where we have our guides on our website, where you can have a step-by-step guide to actually see how you should set everything up in order to print out the profiling charts. Now, for getting a custom printer profile, what you need to do is basically print out the profiling charts on the paper that you want profiled. Once we have those charts, we would then scan them in and process them and create a profile which we will then email back to you. Up to now, for printing out the profiling charts, we would always recommend using the graphical software that you use. Now this was okay for software such as Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, QImage, CorelDRAW, but we did have some issues with some other software such as Lightroom. The way Lightroom would actually open up the charts, because the charts have a special type of format, they don't have a colour workspace assigned to them. Lightroom would actually assign a colour workspace, and that would mean that the colours would change when they actually got printed. So for that reason, we had to say for some software, look, you can't use it. You can't use Lightroom for printing out the profiling charts. Now this has also changed now, because when Adobe brought out Photoshop CS5, they actually removed a colour management option. When you came to print out the profiling charts, you'd have a little drop down for the colour management, and you should be able to set it to say no colour management. Adobe removed that option, which meant we had to do a bit of a strange workaround in order to get the profiling charts printed. Now, with regards to that, Adobe actually made amends. They brought out a utility just for printing out profiling charts. It mustn't be used for printing out images or anything like that, because they will just look wrong. But for profiling charts, it works. Basically what it does is, once you open up the profiling chart, press print, set up your printer driver to print it correctly, then the actual utility turns off all the colour management and makes sure that those charts get printed at the right size and in the right way. It makes the whole process considerably easier. So for that reason, we always recommend that our customers should use this Adobe Color Printer utility. Okay, the first thing to do is to go onto our website, which is www.pureprofiles.com. Now, we've got some information on there, basically giving you an overview about what a profile is, what a custom printer profile is. We've gone into a few more details in printer profiling basics to explain how a profile actually works. We then go into using a printer profile, which explains how you actually install a printer profile and use it. You will find in our download guides that we do have examples of how to actually set up your software to use a printer profile. After that, we've got monitor calibration. Monitor calibration is one of the necessary evils of colour management. Basically, you really should look at getting yourself a monitor calibrator. It closes up the whole loop of colour management. You've got your printer profiled. You also need to have your monitor profiled. The two are totally independent of each other, so you can do one without doing the other. But if you want to actually get colours to match what you see on the screen with what you print out of your printer, you really should get your monitor calibrated as well. After that, we've got the how to order, which gives you some more details about what to look for, what you need to do. There's a compatibility section in there as well, which shows you of any issues with particular software. All these instructions again are in our downloads guide, so I just recommend downloading that and having a quick sort of read through that. Now, if you actually want to order a printer profile, you just click on there, order a printer profile. If you haven't got an account set up, you would need to set up an account with us. It's fairly minor stuff, just things like your email address, so we know where to send the the profiles to. All the information is kept private. We don't sell it on to anybody. But it does enable you to see what profiles you've ordered from us in the past. You'll be able to see what settings you used in the past. And you can also see the progress of your current order. If you just log into your account here, then you can take it from there. Now you can go into history and view what's actually happening with your order. When you actually place an order, you will find that we'll be asking a number of questions about what software you're using, what settings you're using. Because you can use different settings within your printer driver, it's a good idea to write these down just to remind yourself at a later date as to what settings you actually use. They're not really important to us, but they can help us with support. So it's worthwhile filling those details in. Okay, the first place to go to is our downloads page. Now here we've got the profiling charts that you need to download, something called density charts, which I'll explain later, and also our guides, our step-by-step guides. We've also got a test print down there as well. That's actually quite a useful file for testing your profile. It's designed to show particular issues with the profile. So if you want to actually see that your profile is working well, use the test print, download that. That's an A4 print, and that will highlight any issues you may see. Right, the step-by-step guides, these are PDF files. All of these, they're our latest ones. You can see from the file size, they're a bit bigger than the others. These will give you instructions on setting up the software for printing the profiling charts, and then for actually setting up the software for using the profile. Inside the guide you'll also find that there's a number of examples of printer driver settings. The printer driver settings are important. Obviously we can't sort of show every single printer driver out there. So these are more used as a guide to show you what different drivers can look like. One difference with this one is Adobe Color Printer Utility. We don't show what that can actually, how to set that up for using a profile, because you can't use a profile with it. It's purely for printing the profiling charts. But instead we've actually got instructions on there for CS5, Photoshop Elements 8 and Lightroom 3. These guides do get updated, so you may find that actually changes. No, we might have the latest software settings on there for you. Please note we also have some archive guides down here. These are our older guides for software which generally isn't used that much nowadays. Please note this though. That these older guides, unfortunately we can't edit them anymore, and they've got an old address in there, so please don't send them to the address shown in those guides. Only use the address here or on our contacts page. Now going back up, you've now got a decision to make, which is basically, do you use a standard profile or an enhanced profile? The difference between the two is the number of charts, how many colour patches are on each set of charts. If we look at the A4 chart, for the standard charts there's 2 charts in the set, so that's 2 pages that you've got to print out. For the enhanced profile you got 5 pages that you need to print out. What that gives us with the enhanced profile is more colour patches means more accuracy. Now, how much more accuracy depends on the printer, depends on the paper and the ink that you're using. It does vary, but it does give you a more accurate profile. It's not going to be a startling difference, it's going to be a subtle difference. Things like sort of your shadow detail, your black and white printing. I mean, black and white printing is never going to be that perfect when you're using coloured inks, but with an enhanced profile it should remove colour casts. It should make it as neutral as possible without having to use software such as a RIP or using actual grayscale inks. So as for recommendations, if you're just printing from home, you just want your printer to actually print out images that look like your screen, then go for the standard profile. That'll give you much more accuracy than just downloading one of the free generic profiles that you can get. And it will also allow you to profile sort of paper that isn't profiled. No, it doesn't have a generic profile. You should be pretty happy with the results from that, I would have thought. If you're looking for sort of the best quality you can get, say you're doing it for camera clubs, or you just like to get the best quality out of your printer, then go for the enhanced profile. It will give you slightly more detail. Now, you'll notice that there's a number of different sizes on here. The profiles, the charts themselves come in different sizes to fit the paper that you use. You want to use the largest paper that you can get hold of. So if you've got an A4 printer and you've got, say you're using Epson glossy paper, and you've got 6x4 paper and you've got A4 paper, go for the A4 paper because you'll have more colour patches. The actual size of the paper doesn't make any difference to the profile itself. It just allows you to print more colour patches, which will lead to better accuracy. We provide the other sizes for the smaller printers. So if you've got a 6x4 printer, you'll have to go for the 6x4 set. So choose the set that will fit on the paper that you use. By following the settings and the guides, you shouldn't be doing any resizing anyway, but that can cause issues. The charts have to be printed in a certain way on the paper. If they're expanded to things like the A4 chart, if they're expanded to fill up the whole size of the paper, we can't actually read them in. They've got to be at their actual size as saved in the chart files. But like I say, if you use the settings and the guides, that shouldn't be an issue. Now, going down here, we've also got density charts. A density chart is basically a way of identifying what the best paper setting is for your printer driver. Your printer driver has a paper setting or media setting. If you're using Epson, you'll probably see things like Epson Premium Glossy, Semi-Gloss, Heavyweight Matte. Canon drivers have their own sort of paper types on there. And what it does, it sets up the printer driver to print out using a certain mix of inks. It confirms how much ink is to be put down on the paper. Now, the issue with that, with a custom printer profile, is that you've really got to choose the optimum setting for your paper. If you don't, the charts can be too dark, and when we read them in, it can lead to problems with the profile. Basically, you quite often get a magenta cast on your final prints when you're using the profile. You'll find all the shadow details very blocked up, and it's all black. So it's an important step. It's a little complicated though, so we do say it's optional. If you don't want to go through that, if you want to use the recommended paper type setting, you're more than welcome to. You just got to be aware that the actual profile may have problems in the end, and we may have to come back to you and say, look, no, we need to print out the charts using a different setting. Now, we do this fairly regularly, so don't be too worried about that. We don't charge you for another profile. We just need a new set of profiling charts, so it's more hassle for yourself really rather than for us. But if you can do the density charts, it will mean that you will increase accuracy of your profile. You're getting the best quality out of your printer because you want to print out as saturated as colours as possible, so as darker colours as possible without taking it too dark. Because if you lighten them up too much, the profile won't see the full potential of your printer. So we'll go through that a little bit later on. So let's say we're going to do the A4 chart set. We're going to click on download, and for the Mac, it goes into my downloads folder down here. Now, at the same time, I'm going to click on the density charts, and I'm going to download the guide as well. So that's going to take a little bit longer to download. Once the files are downloaded, you can click on it down there, and we can see the files there. We've got the guide, the density charts, and the standard profiling charts. If I open it up in Finder, you can see the files there. Now, click on the profile guide. See here we've got fairly much detailed instructions on all the things you can do. At the moment this is just a Windows guide. We are creating a Mac guide, so you should find that on our website fairly soon if it's not already there. Now the guide itself will actually walk you through the whole process of checking for everything, using the density charts, and then setting up the Adobe Color Printer utility for actually printing the charts. Now that's the next thing we've also got to look at downloading. So if you go back to the website, go to How to Order, go to Adobe Printing Utility, and you see here it's got some instructions there on how to use it, but if we go up to the top, we've got a link here. Now this isn't our software, so obviously we don't host it. You have to download it from Adobe, and you get the page up here. It gives you the information as to why it was created and what you need to do. Now for the Mac, you just need to click on that link there, and you go down to your downloads page, and it's there. Now I'm opening it there, just clicked on it, and we've got that folder up here. The first thing that we need to do is to check your printer and make sure that it's printing correctly. If you're getting any issues with your printer, if you're getting sort of color cast when you're just printing on automatic settings or so, and it's not down to using third-party paper or third-party inks, if you're just using standard OEM inks and OEM paper and you're getting very strange results, a profile isn't going to fix that. That needs to be fixed before you actually get a profile made. So I'll show you how you can do that. You go into your system preferences down here, go to print and scan, and you get your list of printers up here. Now for mine, I just need to go into options and supplies, and we've got a utility tab on there. I check your supply levels as well, make sure that you got enough ink on there. A profile, providing you're using reasonably quality inks, a profile isn't affected by changing ink cartridge. It will be affected if you're using a different type of ink cartridge, so if you're changing over to a different make of ink or something like that, then make sure that those cartridges have all been installed and been running for a number of prints, say 15 prints or so you've got the new ink going through your system. You don't want any of the old ink there from a different sort of ink supplier. But generally, as long as you've got enough ink to print profiling charts, you'll be fine. You go to utility. On this one, you've got the option for printing a test page and cleaning the print heads. Your driver may have different options on there, but all drivers have the option for doing a test print and cleaning the printer heads. What it is basically the printer heads where you've got all the nozzles for outputting the ink onto the paper. Occasionally you get dried ink on those. They just they dry up and they clog, and what you'll see on the screen, particularly when printing the profiling charts, is that you'll get all these thin lines of a different colour going through one of the patches. It'll actually go through a number of the different patches. If it's bad, it will affect all the patches. Sometimes it just affects a certain type of colour. So you might notice it more on the green patches or the blue patches. But what you need to do is to make sure that you've got that solved before you actually attempt to do the profiling charts. So you click on the print test page, then that will go away and it will then print off a test page, which is normally a whole load of lines and, well, normally a kind of grid pattern. And you can normally see little white spaces, little gaps within that grid pattern. Now if you see those spaces, that's an indication that you've got a block nozzle. If you see that, then you go to clean print heads and run that utility, and that will basically go through a cleaning process, and then it'll either give you the option to print another test page, or else you need to come back to this screen and print another test page to make sure that it worked. If you've got a particular problem with block nozzles, you might find you need to clean them a number of times before they actually become unblocked. So it's definitely worthwhile doing this before you print the profiling charts. It's also worthwhile going back to this screen after you print the profiling charts, because we have had cases in the past where the profile starts off fine, the first chart starts printing fine, but a block nozzle has occurred during the actual printing, and by the end of the second chart we're getting all these vertical lines appear. Now we can't do anything about that. No, we just have to reject the charts and ask you to print them again. No, it needs to be fully working, your printer. If you have got blocked nozzles and you can't get rid of them, don't go ahead and print the profiling charts. You need to look at other options for unblocking those nozzles first. Okay, so I'll come out of here now. Okay, we're ready to start printing the profiling charts now. So we click on the printer utility. First box that comes up is just to load up the first profiling chart, a little file dialog box. So we go into our downloads, go to the standard charts that we've downloaded and select the first one. And there we have it. It's all loaded up. It's a very basic utility. It's a little rough around the edges, but there's not a lot to it. You find the options up here. You've got page setup and print. First one is page setup. We need to make sure it's in landscape mode. That's quite important, otherwise you'll only get part of the chart actually printed on the page. So if you're only getting part of the chart printed on the page, not the full chart, then come back, change your orientation over, and make sure it's set to what opposite to what you had it before. Should be horizontal, like that. Landscape. Scale, leave that to 100%. Paper size should be based on the paper that you're using on your printer, so in my case it's A4. Now come down into print. This is where we need to be very careful to make sure that we turn off all colour management in the driver. For profiling, you need to have colour management turned off in your software and your printer driver. Now, using the Adobe Color Printing utility, that handles turning off the colour management in the software. For the driver, you need to do that yourself. Now, all drivers are a little bit different. You'll find various tab names, page names are different between each driver. So unfortunately we can't give you the full details for every single driver going. We've tried to do that with our Windows guides to give you an example of a number of different drivers for the main manufacturers. Now we're going to do that for the Mac as well. We haven't got all the guides up at the moment. Hopefully, but whilst you're watching this, you might have the latest guides on there now, which have the more examples of Mac drivers. But for now, I'm just going to show you the driver for my own personal printer here, which is a 3-in-1 Epson, the PX710. The actual settings should be similar between driver to driver, but you might just need to try and figure out which maps to what setting in your printer driver. They'll be named a little bit differently. Things like media handling might be called paper handling or paper type. If you do get stuck, if you do get any issues, then just, if you can send us a screenshot, then please email us a screenshot of your printer driver and we can advise you on what your settings should be. But for now, I'll just go through and explain what needs to be done on this particular driver. The first one is layout. Nothing needs to be changed on there. Colour matching. This is the first important setting. Now, for most drivers today, that should all be handled for you as it is shown on screen now, with colour sync enabled, but everything greyed out. If you've got a driver where this isn't greyed out, you've got the options. Don't choose colour sync, choose the other option, in this case Epson Colour Controls. You might have it called vendor control, or there might be another name for Canons nowadays. But most drivers will have it all greyed out. It means that the colour sync's already figured out that it shouldn't be applying colour management at this stage, so it's just saying I'm dealing with it. Paper handling. Make sure scale to fit paper size is not selected. You do not want to expand these charts to fill up the page. If they're too big, particularly if they're A4 charts, then we can't actually scan them in, and we'll have to reject them and ask you to send in a new set. So that's going to be disabled. Cover page none. Print settings. Now this is also an important stage. As we said before, the media type defines how much ink is put down on the paper. So you want to choose a media type which gives you the optimum ink density on the paper for the particular paper that you're using. If you put too denser amount of ink onto the paper, the charts will be too dark and it will lead to problems with the profile where you will be getting colour casts and blocking your shadows and that. If you print the charts too lightly, then you won't get the full saturated performance out of your printer. The profile will be created based on the maximum saturation that you've got using the current setting. So you're basically reducing the performance of your printer by doing so. So you need to strike a balance where the charts will are not too dark, but they're still very saturated. Again, this is where density charts will help you find this setting. If you want to go to that extent of looking into the using the density charts, you basically print out the density charts like a profile chart, but use different media types for each chart, and then you can compare them and see which one looks the best. Now it's quite a long process. We've got some details in our guide on there, and what I'll try to do actually, I'll try and create a video later on to show you what you need to do for that, what needs to be looked at. But if you read our guide, that should give you enough information and some screenshots as to what to look for to find the best setting on here. Now for the Epson, if you start off near the top, if you're looking at the glossy settings, they're the ones that put most ink down. If you go into semi-gloss, that's a little bit less ink, semi-gloss and luster. Then you go into your Epson mattes and your heavyweight mattes. There you've put the least amount of ink down. That's the same for all drivers basically. Your glossy will always take more ink than your matte papers. So for this case I'm using some Ilford luster paper, so I'm going to use semi-gloss. Now coming down to your modes, this is important thing is to make sure you take everything that's an automatic off to manual state. You want to keep everything at a defined level, so the printer driver can't go off and suddenly change things at any time. And linking in with this, it's also a good idea to actually save your settings. If your printer driver allows you to actually save all your settings, once you've set them, then save them, because you will be using the same settings every time you use the profile. So certainly at least make a note of all the settings you make, but if you can save them into some settings sort of file which you can then sort of recall at any stage, you then don't have to worry about making sure everything's set up correctly. Now we're going to advanced on here. This gives us our print quality. Again, this is another important one, because you would expect to maybe, if you're looking at getting a profile, you want it to be the highest quality possible. Now, some printer drivers actually change their colour output when you're changing to a different quality setting. How noticeable that is depends on the printer and the driver. But you might find that if you create a profile for one print quality setting, it doesn't work so well when you actually use it with a different print quality setting. That might not be such a problem if you're doing draft printing and then you want to do sort of the one final big print as like the highest quality setting. But no, what we'd probably recommend is actually just get the one profile for the highest quality that you want to use. Then try it at different settings. So if you do use other settings, try it with that and see if it works. If you're getting a change in the colour output and you're not happy with that, then you would need to get a new profile done for the other print quality setting. The other thing to note is some papers don't accept the highest quality print setting because you're basically adding more ink. You're usually using smaller size ink droplets and quite often increasing the density of the ink. It's not like a doubling, you're not, whereas you might see the DPI go doubling up in size. You're not actually doubling the amount of ink being used most of the time. It's quite a lot less. But it can have an effect with some papers where the paper can't absorb that much ink. So again, that's another thing to maybe check the density charts. Check what print quality setting works best for your paper. In this case, I'm going to choose photo. Now, some printer drivers might have a print quality like this, a sort of textual description. Other drivers will have a numeric description, so with 1 being the highest quality. And you also might get a DPI setting as well. So any of those, just choose the print quality that you really want to use this profile with. I'd recommend turning off high speed, any other options on there as well. Now again to colour management, this is the third and again important setting within a printer driver. You need to make sure that the colour management is turned off. In my case, there's no other option, it's turned off. If you don't have that option, if you've got a number of options, you've got to make sure that no colour adjustment is selected. It might be stated somewhat differently in your driver. It might say no colour management. It might be a tick box that says ICM, and when you select that, you then get an option, another tick box to say no colour management. You might even have another tab. So I've seen drivers where you've got a number of tabs and one will say matching. And you've got to go in there and you've got to turn the colour management to none. So there's a number of different ways that this can be displayed in your printer driver. Hopefully it's all fairly self-explanatory, but if you have any queries, again, please do get in touch. Send us a screenshot if you can and we can advise. Getting through the rest, expansion, we certainly don't want to change the size of the image, it's all greyed out for me anyway. Extension settings. Fixed red eye, that has to be turned off. If you've got any settings on your printer driver that does any kind of image enhancement whatsoever, anything that's going to change the colours, anything that does the sharpening, anything like that, please turn it off. You want to make sure that everything is off. Any automatic settings, any enhancement settings, it's all turned off. And two-side printer settings, not really relevant on this. And that's it. All I need to do then is just click print. Now, with the Mac version, we can open up a new file. I think with the Windows version, you actually have to restart the app. But here we can just load in part 2 again. Again, I would go through, check that everything is correct. We've got it on a horizontal landscape mode. We're going to print. I just go through and check the main pages again are all set correctly. Now, I say some drivers we've found don't actually keep the settings from print to print. We notice this because we get the profile charts come through in colours we would expect to be the same colour between chart to chart. They're actually different. And the reason is because normally the media type or the printer type, paper type have been changed just by the printer driver being started up again. So it's a good idea just to double check all of those, and then you just print it again. At this stage, it's probably a good idea just to double check the charts, make sure you've got no marks on them, no scuff marks, no damage to any of the colour patches. Make sure you can't see any vertical lines going through any of the patches, or any lines whatsoever, no mottling or anything like that. If they're all solid colour and it seems like a reasonably good match to what you see on screen, then that chart's ready. There's a few exceptions to that. Third-party inks, you will quite often get a very strong colour cast. That's fine. If you do get different to what you see on screen, as long as it's not overly dark, it shouldn't be a problem. You've got to remember you've just turned off all the colour management in your printer, so it's not going to match up identically to what you see on screen. And then you're ready to go. I would leave the charts to to dry for probably 24 hours. Then put them in a hard-backed envelope and send them off to us. Our contact address is on our website. We really do recommend a hard-backed envelope, because if they get sort of damaged in the post, if they get creased or anything, then we just have to ask for another set. When you do send them, please make sure you get them weighed at the post office, because we do get delays sometimes where not enough postage is being put on, and sometimes the post office go very slow. They hold on to them for a week or so before we actually get hold of them. So a flat A4 cardboard backed envelope is a perfect way to send them. We prefer not to have them in tubes. Again, I wouldn't even recommend sending them sort of by courier or sort of by signatory or anything like that. It's just unnecessary expense for yourselves, and we generally cannot guarantee that someone will always be here to actually accept them. So I would just put standard sort of first class postage on them, get that weighed at the post office and send them off to us. Once we receive the charts, we'll process them. It normally takes 1 to 3 working days. We'll find out if there's any issues with the charts. We'll get in touch with you, and once we've created the profile and we've tested it, we'll then email that back to you. Okay, I think that just about covers how you go about doing that, creating the profiling charts using the Adobe Color Printing utility. I hope that's been informative for you, and if you have any questions whatsoever, then please get in touch. Email address is on our contact page. Thank you for watching.